Hey, folks, happy Saturday, and welcome to one of our final episodes of Plan A Conversations for 2021. 2021. Listen, it is so incredibly wonderful to be with you all today. Last week, I cannot tell you about the feedback that we had with Crystal Berger, who supported us in activating our investment in 2022. Activating our investment in 2022. I mean, she took us from the interpersonal investment to our relationship investment to literally our financial investment and the technology that she is building and creating that's going to solve some of our media inequity issues and just conversations as a whole. Thank you again for your feedback. Crystal literally came in and gave us a masterclass. And so I hope you go back to listen to that. And again, all of these podcast episodes are archived for you for your benefit. It's 9 seasons of robust conversations that are coming to you. So if there's anything that you are focusing in on, you need support in your life, go back and look through those catalog of conversations, something there to support you. And also just want to make sure that I announce my masterclass that's coming up the first week of January, the Personal Sabbatical. If you find yourself being a person who have a hard time saying no to people, you don't have boundaries with other folks or yourself, this is a really great masterclass for you. If you feel your life is overcommitted, you're overwhelmed by your obligations, and you feel that you are overextending your time and your resources and who you are as a person, check out this masterclass. Again, all the links are available in the show notes. And so this week is somewhat of a bittersweet, a somber, and yet celebratory note because we lost one of our giants in history, Bell Hooks. And she has meant so much to so many different people for various different reasons. Myself, I remember discovering Bell Hooks when I was in middle school with one of the church ladies, as we used to call them back in Detroit, who would always come and give me pieces of poetry, pieces of narratives, pieces of critical theory arguments just to have in my back pocket. And later on, she would go on to give me different pieces that would help me develop my oratorical skills in poetry contests and things like that. And I was then introduced to the power of bell hooks. And so as we celebrate her life, her legacy, I could not think of anyone else better to support us in having this conversation and knowing who Bell Hooks is for our audience who are not familiar with her work, but also just in a transformative way of paying homage and praise, to this legend. And the person that you are seeing on your screen and the voice you're about to hear for our audio audience is my dear friend, a mentor, and just incredible light to me and so many other people. And that's Dr. Regina D Langley. Welcome, Dr. Langley, to the show.
Thank you, Klay. Just want to thank you for making space for us to talk about Bell Hooks. Such an incredible human being that just gave us so much. And as you said earlier, such a great loss, a collective loss for so many of us who were introduced to her and the ways in which her work just transformed our lives. And so I just want to thank you and appreciate you for making time for us to just talk a little bit about her, because there isn't enough words that we could use to talk about Bell Hooks.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And Dr. Langley, one of the things that I think has connected me to you and something I followed throughout your whole career when we met in seminary is this idea of marginality, being on the margins, finding your center. And that seemed to be something that really has resonated in your work. And so for you, how were you introduced to Bell Hooks? What was some of those internal conversations, dialogues like? Help our audience understand your impact, the impact that she's had on your life.
I can't really say when I was introduced to Bell Hooks. I just, I was a part women's studies major in undergrad, and then came to seminary and still had these questions about who am I as a Black woman in the world, right? And so throughout, I'm a part historian, so I'd read Sojourner Truth, and Sojourner Truth was at Ain't I a Woman? And then one day coming across Bell Hooks' Ain't I a Woman? And started to grapple with what does it mean for me to be a Black woman in America, particularly like Bell Hooks. I'm from the South, right?
Mm.
And so, you always have to think about regionality when you're trying to put your story together and the communities
Mm.
that form you. And so I was formed by a group of Black women, and those Black women oftentimes dealing with their own sexism and not understanding what it was, and their racism, because a lot of them were working class, just like Bell Hooks talks about in a lot of her work, working class women. And in those different communities, asking you to be silent, right?
Mm.
Because a lot of us grew up with this quote, "Be seen and not heard," and so that
Yeah.
means that you had this kind of internal struggle of wanting to say something, wanting to give voice to what you were experiencing, right? But you knew that it was punishable.
Mm.
And Bell Hooks talks about that in Talking Back, or, if you talk back, you were putting yourself in the position or being in equal to an authority, right? And you
Mm.
could get popped in the mouth. I mean, I never got popped in the mouth, but I didn't come. My mom would never hit us, as children. But knowing that it was a bad thing to even think it, almost to want to give voice to what you were feeling, what you were experiencing. And then I came across, probably in my early 20s or so, Killing Rage.
Hmm.
And that was the book that finally, kind of um, gave me something to a tangible piece of evidence to help me understand that all this internalization of sexism and racism, um, that I was just infuriated by it, right? And so
Mhm.
reading Bell Hooks just kind of began the process of helping me understand. And then I just started to just consume a lot of her work, a lot of it. So, um, yeah, and then when I came to grad school to do my PhD, I started off by wanting to be. I wasn't even thinking about margin so much. I was thinking about the balcony, because I was looking at
Hmm.
what the balcony represented historically, particularly
Mm.
for Black people. And the
Mm.
balcony was this space of, where you were inconspicuously, hide. White people put you there because they didn't want to see you, they didn't want to deal with you. You could be in the space, you can be of the space, but not quote unquote in the space, right? Within.
Mhm.
And so my work just evolved. And one day I was just thinking, and I was like, I want to self-impose,
Hmm.
and just that just took on a life of its own. And then I started to think about the margin, and the margin being a place where I could just be be in, but not of. So yeah.
Yeah. And to help our audience contextualize and understand what you mean by the balcony and what you mean by the margins, help them understand where you were in your process of wanting to be on the margins or in the margins in order to find a space of resistance, find a space of solace. What was that for you?
So when I was in my graduate program in women's studies, I was probably one of three Black women. Yeah, I was one of three Black women, and there were probably about 20 something of us. And so we were always talking about these intersectionalities of race, class, gender. And at that time, no one was really talking about ableism or, disableism or, so those were the kind of the three, the race, class, gender.
Mhm.
And what I started to realize was that um, even though we were supposed to be there to eradicate, these isms, I started to see and understand for white women, it was about power, the power of language, learning, theory and concepts and
Mm.
ideology and philosophy. And because we were reading all of these, Freud and Sigmund Freud and Foucault, Derrida, and the list goes on and on. So we was reading all this theory because the program was heavily theory. And so I kind of now identify myself as a theorist, right? And
Mhm.
so I realized that they were really not interested and invested in eradication. And so most of their work was always going to these poor Black communities to do their research. So
Mhm.
one day I said in the class, I said, why don't you go and do research in your own communities, right? And look at the
Mm.
pathology in your own communities instead of, say it, help me say it.
Pathologizing?
Yes, pathologizing us. because I was in
Yeah.
Cincinnati, and then there was the Tim. I forget the. I think his name was Tim Jones. I can't. Tim Thomas. Tim Jones. I can't remember, but he was a young man who had just been beat up by police in Cincinnati, and they had the city on lockdown and curfew. And several of the white women in the class wanted to go and do their research on, in these communities, and I was just infuriated by it because I always felt like you always go and pull back the pain and the suffering of our communities. Why not just go do it
Yes.
in yours? And so I left that
Hmm.
program with this kind of thinking of, I don't know where I'm going next, but when I get there, I am going to remove myself from these conversations or these events where white people are pathologizing Black people. I was going
Mm.
to stop talking. And I just remember, Maya Angelou having some years where she stopped talking. And I was just going to stop telling my story because, it's always like, so tell me your story, tell me who you are. And I was just like, I'm going to stop talking. I'm just going to be there, but I'm not going to talk.
Huh.
And so the self imposed marginalization started internally first
Okay.
because it wasn't a physical space per se. It was
Hmm.
my own desire to just stop talking about, not talking about, but giving away my story, just for the sake of people wanting to know, like, what's wrong with you? Because I always felt
Mm.
like it was a different intent and motivation for the question, for the questioning. And
Yeah.
it's like you're not gonna know anything about me.
Mhm.
So the marginalization started as an internal exercise before it became a external exercise, and before it became a place and a space.
Yeah. And what I remember in particular about that, and even watching you be the person experiencing a lot of that, is people didn't know how to take you. People
Right,
didn't know how to stomach
right.
your responses or your non responses. And so walk our audience through that process as well, because Bell Hooks, as she talks about the idea of marginality, it is a space of also of resistance.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, Black people in particular, Black women, did not know that you could have that radical openness in that space.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, people thought I was strange. People thought I was mean. They scripted me with all of these kind of negative connotations because they didn't understand what I was practicing. And then
Hmm.
I didn't feel the need to tell them, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I needed to just practice it and just observe the reaction. And so I think it really came to, I don't think, it really came to life for me. And you were there with me in it. I don't know if you remember this, but you were there with me. And so I was probably within like maybe only about 2 or 3 months into my PhD program.
Hmm.
And and I had been there through the summer, so I had already had some people, kind of, knowing that I was not talking to them or whatever. And this incident happened in the dorm, and I was the time
Uh,
I was the dorm assistant. And this white young man came up to me. He says, "You walk around here and think you're better than everybody." And I was like, "Who are you?
hmm.
And do you know me?"
Right.
And I realized that my silence incited violence in him, right?
Yeah.
This kind of, I don't know you, but you don't talk to me, and you should talk to us. It's like I don't have a right to not talk, right?
Right.
Um, and and that started something in me to think about. Started something in me to start thinking about the ways in which we resist incites violence, and oftentimes we're in
Hmm.
spaces where the violence is already there, but we haven't participated in an act that brings it forth, right?
Yeah.
So I grew up looking at TV media, so to speak, with TV mostly, and documentaries where dogs and fire hoses were used on Black bodies because they were just
Hmm.
walking in silence. So that started me to think about,
Mm.
what does this mean that I am silent? I'm not talking. I'm not saying anything to you. I am not bothering you,
Minding my business.
minding my business, but my very being incites violence in you. And you want to
Mm.
destroy me because I am being silent, right? So that was kind of the beginning of the work that, me believing that Black women needed a safe space to just be. And oftentimes that safe space is not in spaces where there is white supremacy or the
Mm.
notion that you are a visitor or stranger in this and I own you. And as a result of that, you need to perform in this space the way that I want you to perform. And
Mm.
so when I started to think about the margin as a place of power, I started to look at clinicians, anthropologists, and then I came across Bell Hooks' article, the margin as a place of radical openness. So it's open for possibilities, but it's also a space where I get to re-examine, I get to theorize, I get to strategize, I get to renew and recover and reimagine myself in a society that is always going to um, um, bring about some violence against me just by the nature of me being there.
Wow. And for you in discovering this work and Bell Hooks being one of the sort of teachers for you with this, what was your sort of greatest learning experience or realization while you were going through the process at the beginning? What did you need to discover before you could continue on in your work?
I needed to discover how I was kind of participating in my own oppression, right, in my own
Wow.
harm. Um, Because oftentimes, we have been socialized to answer when people interrogate us. It's just
Mm.
it's innately in us, particularly as Black people. That if a white person asks you, you answer, right?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
I was just like, I don't have to answer. I don't have to do anything, except like
Right.
old people say is be Black and die. That's like,
Right.
I don't have
Right.
to answer you. I don't have to say anything. Like, if I'm just sitting reading and you come up and say, what are you reading? For me, that's a disruption to what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And I can just look at you and be like, why do you need to know? And I don't even have to say that. I can just give you a look to say, leave me alone. That's what I'm doing.
Right.
It's like now this meme that's circulating on social media where someone says, comes up and says to some, what are you doing? Someone says, minding my business. They're passing out applications. Do you want one? So, yeah.
And I find that it's so interesting, like watching you go through this uh, self-imposed marginality and being on the margins for yourself and putting yourself there. A lot of people were questioning their own internal dialogue, were projecting that out on you. And I remember so many different conversations, and people were like, I'm really trying to understand Regina, but she doesn't open up a space for me to, be able to understand who she is. And I remember so many times I reflect that question back on them. Maybe the real question is you're trying to understand you and
Mhm.
why you can't handle the fact that she is literally in the center of her own life, the center of her own universe. And maybe that's a question you need to get to yourself. And so I'm wondering, even in your work and even in the influence of Bell Hooks, was self actualization one of those things that you wanted to master to arrive at?
Absolutely. Because I think, well, I don't think I'd hate, I don't like saying think because I know that we so often give so many parts of ourselves away, right?
Hmm.
And we do that and we have nothing left for ourselves. We just give,
Hmm.
give, give, and that's just kind of the ways of being a Black woman. We just give, 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 and then one day we wake up and it's like, what do I have left for me?
Hmm.
And I had reached that point where I had just given so much that I wanted to examine, what do I have for me,
Hmm.
right? And it's also about ownership. And one of the most powerful, on page 22, I sent you this article because this was a quote that just changed.
And tell our audience the name of the article one more time.
The name of the article is Choosing the Margin as a Space of Radical Openness. And you can
Okay.
find it on JSTOR, or you can just find it online. But if you go, you can find it. But this is the quote, and I'm going to remove my glasses so I can see. But she says, enter that space. Often this speech about other annihilates, erases. No need to hear your voice when I can talk about you better than you can speak about yourself. No
Hmm.
need to hear your voice. Only tell me about your pain. I want to know your story. And then I will tell it back to you in a new way. Tell it back to you in such a way that it has become mine, my own. Rewriting you, I write myself anew. I am still author, authority. I am still the colonizer, the speaking subject, and you are now at the center of my talk. And a lot of times when people don't know who you are, they want to know your story because they want to own you. And we have to always think about, because Bell Hooks talks about a lot about domination, right? And when you think about white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, male patriarchy, as she used to always say, when you think about how that works together, it's always about domination and ownership. And so if I don't give you anything, any part of me, you can't own me, right?
Hmm.
And I think so often people want to own you. And I don't want
Yeah.
anyone to own me. I own me. And it's always
Hmm.
about ownership. Even in today's society, we hear with all the police brutality and black men and black women being murdered in the public space. It's about ownership. You should have done this. You should, be quiet. All these things,
Yeah.
all this kind of violence. It's like they never come. Often I shouldn't say never. They never come with this type of let me understand what may be happening here when you're in a crisis and then you end up losing your life because you're in a crisis, and you call the people who you think are going to help you. And in their mind, it's about ownership.
Hmm.
And because I own you, then I can do to you whatever I want to do to you. And so I felt at that time in my life that so many people wanted to own me, and so many people had owned me. And I was
Yeah.
doing like this kind of remembering, this recollecting of my pieces and bringing me back together. And the best way for me to do that was to be quiet and to just
Hmm.
kind of walk in silence and be comfortable enough in my skin that whatever people had to say about me, it was okay because they didn't know me. They were
Hmm.
creating a story that they wanted to write or read, or because I always feel like our bodies are read.
Hmm.
And so they were scripting a narrative on me that had nothing to do with me because they didn't know me.
Wow.
And so those were some of the things that Bell Hooks, in some of my readings of her, was teaching me. Like, the margin was a space. You don't go to the margin to stay forever. You go to the
Hmm.
margin to question, interrogate, and inquire about what is happening right now around me, with me, in me, through me. And then you come back a better person because you have evolved.
Hmm.
Right. And that's what Bell Hooks was for me. She continues to be evolution. Because I just remember when I got the news that she had died. I know a lot of people say passed, but when she died, I was on my way to the library to write. And I just pulled over to the side of the street and I just sat in silence for a bit. And then I was like, what do I do with this? What do I
Hmm.
do with losing bell hooks? What do I do with it? And I went to the bookstore. And I have lots of her books, but my books are packed right now. And so, but I just wanted to touch, a piece of her writing. I just wanted to touch something that was tangible. Um, and that's when I picked up Kill and Rage, because that book had been so important to me and helping me to articulate, as she talks about in the article, the politics of articulation. And sometimes we're just lost for words. And at that moment, I was just lost for words.
Hmm.
So I went to the bookstore, and I did a practice that I used to do when I was, in my early days of therapy. And when I would leave therapy and just had all these questions, I would just go to a bookstore or to the
Hmm.
library and just sit among books. So that's what I did the other day. I went to the bookstore. They had two copies of Bell Hooks. They had All About Love and Kill and Rage. So I
Hmm.
was able to hold Kill and Rage because that was the book that gave me articulation about the the rage that was in me because of all of the sexism and the racism that was that was in my life, and the
Yeah.
insults and the assaults, the insults and assaults that you deal with daily of being in white spaces, and in sometimes male dominated spaces. So I just sat there, and then I just started to read some of some of the chapters again, and that was solace for me. Um,
Yeah.
and and then I just just kind of riding around. I had all these questions like, how, why, what happened, all the questions that you ask, like I don't know bell hooks
Hmm.
like that, but
Right.
she was such an integral part of my life and of my development and my coming into theory. Um, and I just needed to just be with her spirit. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, Dr. Langley, so many people don't take the time to be able to sit with their feelings, sit with their emotions, sit with what it is that they are experiencing, at the time. And when so many different folks who are influential and important in our lives, when they die, when they pass away, it just really seems like a part of who they are infuses within us. And one thing that you just said that was just, I think, our audience in particular, as we talk about purpose, living life, is being able to hold several emotions in our hands and within us at the same time. You had two books in your hand at the bookstore, and both one was rage and one love. How can we coexist? And how, for you, how have you been able to coexist with holding, or if you have, two of those sacred emotions at the same time?
The best answer that I give is that's because I've done the work. I can be mad about something, and have rage about it, but at the same time, I can have love. I can have think about justice and think about equity and think about, because I think these things. Love comes from a place of rage,
Hmm.
because it's like I
Hmm.
love this thing so much, but I'm so mad about it because it's not doing what it's supposed to do,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so I think we always think that we have to have the either or. Bill Hooks says we have
Right.
to have the and both the both and.
Yeah.
So I can embody both of these things. If I am being honest, I can pretend that they don't coexist, but they do.
Yeah.
I think the rage stems from love. Because
Hmm.
if I was so impassioned about something, it wouldn't make me mad,
Right.
right? Um,
Right.
so yeah, so I think people have to tap into the both and not leave one behind. It's like the same argument that feminists used to say, either you're a woman or you're black. Well, I'm both. can't walk in the room and say, I'm a woman here, but you don't see that I'm Black. No, I can't do that. You see me as a Black woman.
And when you were speaking about, of course, going to the margins and then re-emerging and bringing in new insights and new thought processes in your lives, what did that do to your relationships? Because I know so many people who are attempting or wanting to have this level of marginality in their life, but they're so afraid of losing the relationships that are in their life because we're taught and patterned to think that other people's opinions of us is who we are at our center. And if we do stuff that offends, that upsets, that doesn't give anyone an opportunity to draw a conclusion on us, we can't participate in any of the newness. So what did this do for your relationships?
I lost some, which was good, because I
Yeah.
think a lot of times when we are afraid to let go of toxic, harmful um, relationships, we're doing more harm than we're doing good, and that's not from a place of love.
Yeah.
That's a place of fear, and Bell Hooks even talked about that too. Um, and I don't. I guess I'm just willing to risk it, right? Because if it's real, um, I could say the little cliche, if you love something, set it free,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
whatever. But I think people are so consumed by what other people think.
Yeah.
I just remember, growing up, my mom's like, what other people think about you is none of your business. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't, and I mean, like Tabitha Brown now is kind of the woman that, talks about a lot. It's like, because it's my business, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
I want to be whole, right? And I always think
Hmm.
about the man at the pool of Bethesda. He was there for 38 years. Was it 38
Hmm.
years?
Yeah.
And Jesus finally says to him, do you want to be made whole? In order for him
Wow.
to be made whole, he had to let go of some things. And sometimes letting go of things includes letting go of people, right?
Mm.
Um, letting go of opportunities. Even with when you reached out to me, and the first thing I did was say, I know someone better, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and it wasn't so much, that I knew someone that could talk about bell hooks more than me or whatever. The first place that I went is like, I don't know if I know that much about bell hooks. And then I
Hmm.
realized I know a lot about bell hooks. I mean, I've had great opportunities to be in her presence. And I was thinking like, oh, I've only seen bell hooks in person once. And then I realized that's not true. I've seen bell
No.
hooks in person many times. And I've listened to her tell all kinds of great and wonderful stories. And, and I even had an opportunity to meet her in person, but I said no because of the person that was offering me the opportunity. And that's sometimes to
Mm.
my detriment, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
I say no because I go back sometimes and I think through my life, and I had an opportunity to be at the 2008 Democratic National Convention where Barack Obama gave his national speech, the
Yeah.
iconic speech. But I said no because of the person who was extending the gift to me. And so, but I always say, that if it is meant for me to meet the person, I will meet the person on my own terms. And no one will
Mm.
have this thing of, I introduce you or I did this for you or whatever, because there's
Mm.
so many strings attached to that. And,
Mm.
um, and I've been reading lots of articles over the last 2 days, 3 days, 2 days. And people just talked about bell hooks as being free. She was a radical free woman. And I've heard people say, not that I'm radical free, but like that I move in a
You are radical free.
certain
Yeah. Yeah, you're radical free. Go ahead. I'll sum up my assessment on that. But go ahead.
And so I have, often said no to lots of things because I was like, no, you're not going to own me.
Yeah.
The best practice that, we learn as children to say thank you and please, you know. And so when a person does something great for me, I say thank you. When it no longer works or serves me and is harmful to me, I know how to leave. And I'm constantly reminding people that you work at the will of yourself. Most people always give the power to someone else, but I
Yeah.
understood at a point in my life that I also work at my will. And if something becomes harmful, because if you get fired, they give you no notice. It's gratuitous for you to give them notice, right? But
Right.
you work at your will.
Yeah.
And understanding that is that I can walk away. And have I oftentimes burned bridges? Yes, sometimes I took the gasoline with the match. But I'm not afraid to walk away, and I'm not afraid to let go. I'm not afraid. Do I have to sit with it? Do I have to question it? Absolutely. But it's for my good. It is for my good.
And I think that's the power of women like you, women like Bell Hooks, and the influence of their work, her work, your work, is you give people permission to walk away from things in love of self and not resentment towards other people. And knowing that every time that it is literally time to get up and move, it's because you are loving yourself radically
Right.
in an unconditional way. And other people are not going to own the story that you want to tell. They can say whatever they want, but they don't own you or possess your body.
Right. Exactly. And I think for us as Black people, we have to understand that is radical for us to own our bodies and own our stories. And I go to the margin from time to time. I mean, it's like it's a one-time thing. It's like, if I'm really trying to figure out something in my life, I will go quiet for a bit. And I remember Bell Hooks sharing a story once, and she said that she had gone quiet, and people like, "Where's Bell Hooks? What is Bell Hooks doing? Where's Bell Hooks? Where's Bell Hooks?" And when she came out of her silence, she was like, "I was doing my work." But this work is ongoing. It doesn't stop. It's like, I used to tell my students, I taught, as a graduate adjunct professor. And I used to tell my students, I used to say to them, because you have come in this room, you will be forever changed. You always have this one student's like, how do you know? That's because I'm going to give you information and
Yeah.
to help you think about some things, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the semester, they would come to me in tears because they're like, I am forever changed. But you have to continue to do the work because that pool of work is not the end. You have to
Right.
build on that. And so, and that was the gift that Belle gave us. Belle gave us a continuum. And she will continue to give us a continuum, because all of us are thinking about Bell Hooks and what Bell Hooks meant to us. And all of us are thinking about our introduction to her. And we're going back and thinking about what was I doing at that point in my life when I was introduced to Bell Hooks.
Yeah.
And I was mad. I was mad as hell. I was just mad. I had been silent about a lot of things that I saw, injustices. I was mad. And then I saw Kill and Rage. And I was like, yes. And so she, she opens the story about she wants to stab this guy on the plane because, her friend has been denied first class seating because the people at the desk messed up her ticket. Because of course, the people didn't expect that bell hooks, these two Black women, would be in first class, right? So of
Right.
course, like, you're in the wrong place. Well, I'm in the right place. I'm in the right line. And then, so her friend was forced out of her seat, and this white man sat next to her, and Belle's like, I just want to stab him. I just want to shoot him if I had a gun in my pocket. And not understanding that sometimes that is the place where we begin to theorize, right? That out of that place of rage, we begin to make sense of our existence in the world. And that's what happened to me, that I began to make sense of my existence in the world with killing rage, because I was so passionate, I was so furious that I was saying yes to all these things and these people and these places that were harmful to me.
So is the margins also a healing place?
Absolutely. I consider the margin to be a sanctuary because, sometimes the margin for me is just, coming in from being out in the world and experiencing, slights and invisibility, and then just coming home and getting under a blanket and being still and quiet, and that might be for a couple of days. I'm not saying I don't get up and do other things, but just to
Right.
kind of be in a space where I'm just thinking through it and how do I want to respond to it, but also how do I want to release it, right? Because I think you have to have a space where you own it. You have to own it. You cannot be wounded and harmed and then just pretend that it didn't exist,
Right.
right? You have to
Right.
sit with it, and then you have to decide how you want to let it go so that it doesn't just stay inside of you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm. So yeah.
And I think that's a part that a lot of us struggle with, because there are these instances in life where we have this rage, we have this anger, but we don't know how to channel that into productive work that is supportive not only of ourselves, but also maybe our learnings in the community as a whole. And one thing that I've learned from you in particular is sometimes this idea of radical openness to being in the margins, coming back to center, also says that you lose potential opportunities because you are this radical individual in a world where people are trying to find their own wholeness, but they're still not there yet. And so for you, how do you digest that, being this person that so many folks see as they have self actualized their own sense of power in the world, and also knowing that sometimes that has presented where opportunities um, uh, didn't happen?
um I can't worry about what could have been,
Mm,
because that produces regret,
yeah,
and I don't usually um regret my decisions because I have a knowing. I have a
yeah,
knowing that, because if I'm assessing it correctly, right? Because I'm participating in it, if I'm fully in it, you know, um, then I'm taking away something from it. And when I'm taking something away from it, I'm also parsing it out and pulling it apart and saying, is this right for me? Is it good for me? How do I feel? How does my body feel? Right?
yes,
How does my
yeah,
spirit feel? How do I bring my full self to this and know that it's good or know that it's not good? And if it's not good, still choose it.
that's right.
So I had a great opportunity when I was finishing up my doctoral program to go to, the prestige, the high of high, Ivy,
Mhm.
um, Ivory, and I'd never had a panic attack. And in the process of interviewing for the position, I had a panic attack where I could not breathe.
Hmm.
And that had never happened to me before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew it was a no for me. Now, my community of people were saying, of course, of course, of course. And I could have said yes. But I had also read and knew all of these powerful Black women that had died at early ages, as being a part of the academy, June Jordan, Audre Lorde, Pat Parker, all these women. And I don't know what, their health. I know Audre Lorde died of cancer. I think June Jordan died of cancer. And I was like, I could say yes to this, and I could say no to me, or I can say no to this and yes to me. And
Hmm.
so the test was, when I got the offer, I responded and I addressed each issue in the offer that I had spoke about and questioned, but was not fully addressed in the offer. And I wrote back,
Hmm.
and the person wrote me back and said, "Thank you, but no, thank you."
Hmm.
And I was like, "No, that what I believe to be true." And I have this quote that I always remind myself: honor what I know to be true.
That's right.
And I knew the truth of that situation. And then when I wrote my response, I said, I will take this position with these concessions. And the person responded to me the way that I knew they would. And so it was final for me. It was set. It was settled. And I moved forward. And there was a lot of chatter because, like, oh, Regina turned down this position at this particular institution. And it was like, but you didn't go through the process with Regina. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And the real question was, I think, even in these instances, which what I love about the margin, for a lot of folks, they are trying to ask, how is it that she was able to have such peace in making a decision when something so big like this, in air quotes,
mhm.
for our audio audience, was at her disposal, and at the same time, you chose yourself because you had done the work and knowing that you're bigger than these so-called big positions.
Right. Well, yeah, because I knew from the time I was a little girl that I was enough. That I was enough. Not that I didn't struggle and I wasn't challenged by a whole lot of, because you know all of us are developed, and um, I we're developing families, right?
Yeah.
And so children develop in families. They just do. They
Hmm.
learn how to be in the world in their families. And so I was in a family where my mom gave us the choice to choose. She always made us understand there were, ramifications, consequences, but you get to choose. And as a result of that, I always knew I had choice. And I always understood that my choices had consequences, ramifications,
Yeah.
but I got to choose. And I had to live with the choice that I chose. And that also taught me that I could choose me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's something I will always do. I don't care what it
Hmm.
looks like to anyone else.
Yeah.
I get to choose. I get to choose.
Hmm.
And that's what kind of the margin teaches us if we are willing to engage it and engage it fully.
Hmm.
And that's what, the article, the margin is as radical openness, because it's about radical possibility.
Mm.
It's
Hmm.
about radical possibility. If I just go in, and that in, I had a really good friend in undergrad, Ife. And Ife used to always say, if you don't go in, you'll go without.
Hmm.
And so the margin for me is a place where I go in, so that when I come out, I am full and I can give, more me, the full me, not the empty me, not the wounded me, not the uncertain me, but the full me to the world. And that's the light. And that's what Bell Hooks did for us. Bell Hooks was honest. Bell Hooks was a truth teller. Bell Hooks was light. Bell Hooks was funny. I mean, one time she was telling a story about, the young woman who plaited her hair. And that's what she said. She says, so the young woman comes and you know how Bell Hooks talks, right? She said she would come and plait my hair and I'm talking to her. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is me being fun. I was like, you pay somebody to plait your hair. But then I started to think about, she's empowering another black woman. That woman gets to come and sit and be in the presence of Bell Hooks in an intimate way, because Black women doing hair together is intimacy. Think about Black women in the beauty shop. That's where Black women go and tell their hairdresser their stories, their heartbreaks. And that is space. That is occupying a space that is for Black women only, for them to tell their stories of hurt, of pain, of healing, of joy, of triumph. And that was my work. My work was about creating a safe space for Black women to be. And sometimes I would just go to the beauty shop to get my hair, the salon beauty shop, to get my hair, just get my hair shampooed, conditioned, and just not say anything, but just let the woman who was washing my hair wash my hair. And it was therapeutic. It was healing, just to have someone, like in For Colored Girls, to lay hands on us.
Yeah.
And that was the gift that Bell Hooks gave. Bell Hooks would tell funny stories, and she would just laugh till she buckled over laughing. And I saw that, I experienced that with her. But I also saw her in moments where she was a truth teller, and that truth could be painful. And I know, sometimes when I'm telling people truth, they say I'm chastising. And I'm trying to correct for you to be your best self.
Yeah.
And those were the lessons that she gave us, that she gave me. And
Yeah. And Dr. Langley, as we wrap up and before I let you go, it's really interesting because Bell Hooks offered you that perspective and offered you a space to think about the margin, the center. And here it is. That is literally the work that you have offered me throughout all of these years. And a friend called me yesterday, and I was so emotional because it's the end of the year, my anniversary of this work that I've been doing, going on now 16 years. The day after Christmas will be that new portal. I remember just so many times sitting at your feet in I can't think of the place on seminary's campus that has the lodging there. I forgot the name, but just hearing you correct a lot of my thought processes, the ways in which I was downloading information, and the ways in which, sometimes I was speaking too much, and you would just say, well, just think on that. And you would often push me to the margin. And then I would come back with something new. And then I would go and set out on this journey. And the friend yesterday as I'm thinking about all this, she said to me, what you have done that many of us just won't get to in this lifetime is self-actualization. And as soon as she said that, I started just bursting into tears because I said, I'm talking to the woman who taught me self-actualization tomorrow.
Wow.
And here it is, the legacy of Bell Hooks is what you have been instilling in so many of us. Because I think about even my partner, Joshua, the first time you sat at the bar stool and we record our first episode, he could not stop with that word agency, autonomy. And it did that. It does that. And even folks from seminary, they will often reference, well, Regina did, Dr. Langley did. And I just want to make sure you understand that you have given me something that I now realize, especially yesterday. I'm thinking we all have this gift and this courage to go to the margin, to be who you are, and to let go of any of the desires to fit into other people's narratives, but to create your own. And because of that, her legacy is yours. Your legacy is hers. And now it literally has infused to all of us while you are here. And I just can't thank you enough for teaching me the beauty, the pain, the struggle, the joy, the freedom, and the truth of what being in the margin, coming back to your center, and the self-actualization can do that no form of financial currency or material possessions could ever offer, but just literally being radically whole in this sphere, in the earthly plane, all because you have the power to just be. Thank you for giving me that work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for making space. And we say her name, Gloria Jean Watkins, Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks. Thank you so much.
And listen, audience, of course, you can learn more about me at clayuswilliams.com, and Dr. Langley. If people are interested in just connecting with you more, where can we do that?
I'm on Instagram at Regina D Langley, on Twitter at blackgirl007, BLKGRL007. Yeah, I'm just kind of moving around in the world and just being.
Just being. And so listen, folks, happy holidays. Thank you so much for this year of Plan A Conversations, for being a part of this community. And I really hope you'll take the time to go back and parse through this episode and figure out ways in which Bell Hooks' examples, Dr. Langley's examples, can be influential to your life. Again, you can learn more about me by visiting clayuswilliams.com. And I'm on all of your favorite social media by the handle of @PlanA with Klay. Happy holidays. Look forward to seeing you in 2022. Thank you, Dr. Langley.
Thank you.